The Oscars happened. The 93rd Oscars happened last night, and they were a super woke fest and a super COVID fest with a few glitches, and nobody watched. But you know what? That's the way it is with elites and the rest of us. It's Rob Nelson Live. Hey, I'm Rob Nelson. I used to host a show on Fox, and now I do a digital live stream called Rob Nelson Live. And my whole mission is to figure out how in this time of division we can find common ground.
Speech, and they're not allowed to do that anymore.
No, I understand what it's up.
They be focused on rebuilding California.
Oh, it's so true. Come on. This is where this gets real. He says you're heading. I wouldn't want to be black and driving in a car. Right. Point there, right? Some of what's in this music, you can't sanitize it. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on whatever streaming platform you guys are on, from Reddit to YouTube to TikTok to Instagram to Facebook, you name it, you're there. We're here in our virtual studios here in Florida and Los Angeles. And as always, like to keep this as hyper interactive as possible. So we're going to jump right in. Last night was the Oscars, the 93rd Oscars. Okay, I've never been a big Oscar watcher. You know, as a kid, I did. And then as a young adult, I'd watch occasionally, and I'd watch less and less each year. Did anybody watch the Oscars this year? Well, they happened, and they actually tried to make them a little less virtual than most virtual events. Steven Soderbergh, the director, produced them first time, and he was like, no Zoom. He's like, this is not a webinar. It's a show. So there was no Zooming. They had in-person they had people in person in Union Station in Los Angeles, and they had sort of a separate little thing at the Dolby Theater, and they did it like a real show, sort of. So they had a 170-person limit inside Union Station because of COVID. And they set it up so it was almost like a train. Union Station is a train station. People would come and go, so you'd never have too many people at once. And they set people nice and far apart so no one would be overlapped. And they required masks, except not when you talk, because obviously you can't cover up the celeb's face when they talk. And they made it sort of, they even had an epidemiologist come on at the beginning of the show and talk about how, COVID safe they were. And for those of you who do production, I know some of you do, they followed Hollywood's production protocols to make it as COVID safe as possible. Multiple COVID tests to make sure you were negative, masking part of the time, not all of the time. Again, can't cover the celeb's face up. 170 people only, which meant basically only the nominees and their plus ones. That meant none of the star-studded Hollywood elite could come. None of the big execs could come. Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, couldn't come. That guy's probably pissed. They're like, what do you mean I can't come? I go to everything. But I find it interesting the way they did my whole point in this episode is how out of touch elites are with everybody else. And Hollywood is packed with elites. I'm not saying everyone who works in Hollywood's an elite, but when you get into the Oscars and the stars, it's an elite world of its own. I mean, it matches the high level of politics. I don't know which has more elitism in it, the national politics and members of Congress and the presidency, or Hollywood. But I find it fascinating. 170 people. That was it. All spaced out. But they got there like on airplanes. I mean, right? I mean, think about it. You get on an airplane. You sit 5 inches from somebody, maybe 6 inches, maybe if you're lucky a foot, for hours with a mask on. But then you go in there and we're going to keep everybody far apart, make sure nobody's too close to each other. Again, time spent inside a contained space, bad for you. Time spent inside an airplane, bad for you. But not because they ventilate them. But that's not the point. Point is they were going to make this look and feel as woke as possible. And I use that word intentionally because I feel like at a certain level it was kind of COVID theater to be. We're not going to get to the political theater of it all, the diversity political theater. But even the red carpet, they had a 7-foot rule. So they'd have a limited, tiny, short red carpet. So the handful of celebs that were there could walk down it. Reporters had to stay 7 feet away, all masked up, 7 feet away. Again, airplanes. You will stay 7 feet from me, but you will not be 7 feet unless I flew it on my private jet, which maybe some of them did. But again, how out of touch they are. I mean, What about like grocery stores? And by the way, there's an MIT study. I mentioned this before, and you guys should look it up. It's not some quacky, kooky study. It's an MIT study that says masking, from 6 feet or 60 feet, it's all about the same. If you're indoors, it's how long you're indoors. The virus goes up, it comes down. Your mask doesn't keep you from getting it. If you're near somebody, you might get it, you might not. 6 feet, 60 feet makes no difference. Peer-approved study. Tomorrow, the CDC is going to issue guidelines, and they're going to say you don't need to wear masks outside anymore. They've known that for a long, long time, but they're finally going to say it. I think they wanted to wait to give Biden his first 100 days, but they're going to say you don't need masks outside anymore. And yet people are wearing masks. Masks have become a crazy thing. I'm not anti-mask. I wear a mask at the gym. Nobody else seems to wear a mask anymore at the gym, but they all wipe down all the equipment, even though it's an airborne virus. Go figure. I thought it was interesting. Steven Soderbergh, the producer, said, there's no universe where we are going to ever put anybody at risk. That's how he described it. Again, did you forget about grocery stores? And my point is, what about all the people in the pandemic for the last year? We were in grocery stores. Those workers were exposed to people all day long. Were you 7 feet away when you checked out at the grocery store? I don't think so. I think the checkout clerk was like 1.5 feet from you the whole time, person after person after person, and they're wearing their masks. I'm sorry. I think we put all kinds of people at risk, and it was very convenient for those of us who didn't have to worry about it. It's very convenient for elites and even for regular people. I benefited from having people in stores. The reality is I was out all the time, so I wasn't locked down in quarantine, not even for one single day. So at least I wasn't, doing one thing and, saying another. But, all the people saying, oh, we got to take care of everybody and all that, again, wouldn't put anyone at risk, says Soderbergh. But you did. You put all kinds of people at risk so you could get your food and groceries and do whatever else you did and ride in your Ubers, which I'm not judging. I'm just saying stop being so hypocritical about it. But that's my little COVID rant. This isn't all just about COVID. This was about the Academy Awards, the Oscars, the 93rd Oscars, 93 years in a row. Okay, well, they tried to make it woke, like I said. They tried to make it very, very woke. They had everything they could to maximize diversity. Tyler Boylan. Yes, it's been a cluster. Impossible to make perfect policy, but do what you can. I agree with that, Tyler. And I'm being a little extra harsh because I do believe in good faith. Many leaders tried to do that. I've given credit to Andrew Cuomo, despite the fact that I, discredit him for patting himself on the back so hard and accepting a Grammy, and just be like, I don't want a Grammy from you guys. I've got better things to do, writing a book, self-promoting, all that. But I gave him credit for facing hard decisions, making tough choices in the ground zero of this epidemic. And I even gave Gavin Newsom credit early on for having to figure out what to do. And everyone was scared, nobody knew. But then their hypocrisy and their politicking and their messaging got in the way for me. And I feel like, a lot of leadership wasn't that. And I don't believe Anthony Fauci is literally, the guy wants to be on TV more than anything. And he flip-flops like crazy. And again, I gave him credit early on going, he doesn't know. But it's just become such a scene of like, my politics, your politics, our message, your message. And both sides have their messaging going. And it's sad because what we don't need is any more messaging. But what the Oscars was more messaging at all of us. Again, the diversity messaging, right? And they did it. They had, made sure they had, black and brown people in every single shot, people everywhere, whatever, make sure you see it. All the nominees, are going to, for the most part, be, politically correct. And by the way, almost all the films were small. Like the studios got shafted, major shafting. It was all independent films, no blockbusters, literally, knocked out one after the other. Netflix got 7 awards, I don't know if any studios got any awards. I mean, for Best Picture, certainly not, right? I mean, it was all these small films that nobody watched. Nobody watched. Because they were kind of independent films. I mean, nobody. I'm sure some of you watched, a few of them. But overall, nobody really watched the movies that they made such a big deal out of. And here's what I want to say. Despite all their best attempts, right? Daniel Kaluuya won Best Supporting Actor. Yoo Jong-yoon won Best Supporting Actress. One Asian, one black person, both people of color. Viola Davis was up for Best Actress. Chadwick Boseman was up for Best Actor. Neither one of them won. At the end of the day, who did they give the 2 big awards to? 2 old white people. Frances McDermott and Anthony Hopkins. 2 old white people won Best Supporting Actor and Best Supporting Actress. And literally, they moved the Best Picture nominee up. Normally it's the last thing you get, but they moved it up to right before so that they could give out the leading best actor and actress at the very end, and they'd give the best actor out at the very end. Just a sidebar. How come the best actor always gets the last one? Why doesn't the best actress get it? Why does the best actor get it? Monkey arms not going there, but that's okay. You won't see me work out only in my mask. In No Man Land wins. Chloe Zhao wins she's the first person of color, female woman of color to win win the best director. But it's interesting. Do you know that only 2 women have won that, directing a Best Picture film? In 93 years, only 2 women have won. Kathleen Bigelow with Hurt Locker in 2009. And now Chloe Zhao, which, by the way, China censored it. There was a whole thing. They don't like what she said, negative comments about China. Like LeBron James won't criticize China, NBA, shoe deals and all that. But Zhao criticized China. And they literally, Bao and Sogu, the 2 major search engines in China, no mention that she won the best picture. No mention that a Chinese woman won the best picture for the first time in 100 years. But that's okay. I want to play, but before I play this, just this final note here. So the Oscars really tried. They really tried to be woke diversity crazy. And I don't care what you think. They badly wanted Boseman to win. They set it up so he would. They set it up so the last final thing would be the best actor. And who would get it would be this amazingly talented black actor, and he'd receive it posthumously because he died. And I'm not saying he's a brilliant actor. I'm not saying he shouldn't have gotten it or should have gotten it, but they clearly wanted him to get it, along with Viola Davis. Here's the catch. Despite all their attempts and all their work, there's one thing they don't control. They don't actually control the votes, right? They're not rigged. If they rigged those votes, I mean, there's auditors looking at that stuff. It's like reality shows. If you rig it, you're done. You'd get sued so much. I did a show on a reality show for ABC a number of years ago about a bunch of students going to college, and all underprivileged kids one would win a full scholarship. And they let one girl into the show because her dad was a high up exec at ABC, and they pulled plugs and levers and let her in, knowing she'd never win, just let her be on it. She wasn't underprivileged, to say the least. She was overprivileged. She won. And I remember the producers calling me in and saying, oh my God, the judges voted for her. She was so smart, she gamed the system. We are going to give the free scholarship, all inclusive, to the one person who doesn't deserve it, who shouldn't have even really been in the show. My point is, I was like, can you change it? They're like, no, we're screwed. They can't change the outcome. So despite their best attempts, who wins? Anthony Hopkins, the old white dude, wins the big award that they had saved. Point is, you can't message woke through enough. The part of the problem is nobody even knows anymore. Like, everything's so diversity oriented that it's almost like you question everything. And it's sad, years ago at Stanford, I remember a friend of mine who was a student, a black woman, would say to me, and this is years ago, said, you know what I hate about, and she wasn't like a conservative per se, but she was just like, well, one thing I hate is every time I get something, people question if I got it because I earned it, because they think somehow the system's pushing me up because I'm black. And it's one of my concerns about pushing diversity the way we push it. Not that we don't want diversity, but by forcing everything to have a diversity quotient to it, people start questioning whether it was really earned or not earned, which is stupid, because a lot of the diversity stuff would be earned. And the Oscars tried, but couldn't pull it off. Couldn't get Chadwick Boseman the best actor award. It went to Anthony Hopkins, who, by the way, a week and a half ago in an interview basically said he phoned in the performance. He was like, this wasn't a really hard movie for me to make. He's like, I know how to turn it on and turn it off pretty fast. So the guy didn't even work very hard for his second Oscar win. Okay, let me play a little video of you, because for you, there is a point underneath all this that's not just about me picking on wokeness and picking on how out of touch Hollywood is. And it has to do with Daniel Kaluuya, who won the best supporting actor for his portrayal of Fred Hampton in Judas and the Black Messiah. For those of you who don't know, Fred Hampton was a black nationalist. He was the leader of the Chicago Black Panther Party. He was, I think, the co-chair of the National Black Panther Party. He was a radical. He was a hardcore leftist radical, and his legacy. He was assassinated in 1969 in a counterintelligence probe led by the FBI, which is why they call it an assassination. Back then, liberals hated and distrusted the government intelligence services, and they thought he was a terrorist threat, and they wanted to stop him. What he was really doing, and again, this is where my real politics comes out. You know, some of you think I'm on the right. Parts of me are on the right, but parts of me are on the far left. I'm a huge Malcolm X fan, and I always understood what the Black Panther Party was trying to accomplish, which was to empower the weakest, most impoverished part of their community, of the Black community, and give them a voice, give them political power, give them economic power, give them a path. That's who Fred Hampton was. He was a man who fought for the weakest and the poorest in Chicago's Black community, and fought to get him off drugs, fought to get him out of gangs, fought to give him a purpose. And yes, he did it as a Black Panther. Daniel Kaluuya won for Best Supporting Actor in the role. Here's a tiny piece of his acceptance speech.
And the Oscar goes to Daniel Kaluuya, Judas and the Black Panther.
And to Chairman Fred Hampton, bro, man, what a man. He was on this earth for 21 years, and he found a way to feed kids, breakfast, educate kids, give free medical care against all the odds. And yeah, man, there's so much work to do, guys, and that's on everyone in this room. This ain't no single man job. That's some real, and I look to everyone, every single one of you. You got work to do.
So, and it's a great acceptance speech, actually. I mean, they let them all have like 5 minutes for their acceptance speeches. And I just want to point out before I get into the substance of it, did you see the little clip of the play? There's like 10, 20 people in there, like in the room, all spaced out. I'm sorry. It is beyond COVID crazy. You know, I held a town hall in Jacksonville. We had 200 people in a space smaller than that. We had plenty of social distancing. Not a single person got COVID. We did temperature checks, the whole thing. There were no COVID reports afterwards. They did 2 of them. Again, it's an obsession. There was something, almost felt like they were in a little, like, tiny little nightclub lounge with like 15 people there. It's like Santa Monica Boulevard in Hollywood, where there's these little theaters that seat 25 people and nobody goes to them. It's like, except this was the Oscars. But back to Kaluuya and his speech. I just said who Fred Hampton was. Fred Hampton was a radical. Yes, Fred Hampton was a radical. Was he a terrorist? Black Panthers were terrorists of a certain kind, you know, same way you'd say, like, you know, we like to now say, you know, right-wing terrorists. They were left-wing terrorists. But the Black Panthers had a mission, had a purpose, and Fred Hampton was fighting for those who no one else would fight for. And I support that. And I believe in that, whatever the politics. And the guy got assassinated. But Kaluuya's speech, we've got work to do, every one of you. It's not a one-man job. It requires every one of you out there to do it. Fred Hampton was out feeding the homeless, feeding the poor. He was getting schools, hospitals, cares, single-handedly fighting to give people what they didn't have. And here's my point on all this. Why is Hollywood doing another self-aggrandizing performance? Oh, at this time we're really connecting it. We're honoring COVID, and we're doing it in such a beautiful way. And, you know, they pat themselves on the back for how connecting it was. 58% viewership dropped. 58% viewership drop. Literally, they had 9 million people. By perspective, when I did my talk show on Fox, I had 1 million people a day. That's just me by myself, not super famous. 1 million people a day. They got 9 for the 93rd, you know, Academy Awards. But why didn't they do something to honor that if they're so big on it? How about instead of doing their little self-congratulating awards, COVID style, what if they said we're doing the awards and we're doing them as a giant charity this year to give money? We're going to divide it into 2 pockets. We're going to give money to small businesses that have been crushed. We're going to focus on a certain percentage of Black businesses that have been crushed because they've been crushed hardest. We're going to give it to white businesses too. And we're going to focus on people in really impoverished communities who are hardest hit by this. We're going to focus it, and we're going to do like a national fundraiser around this. Watch the awards. And instead, we're not going to give a single award to an actor. Not one. You guys can come and watch. We'll show bits of your movies, but we're not going to give one single award to an actor. We're going to give every single award to an American, to a person who fought through this pandemic and did something great. And we're going to raise money. What if they did that? Dave Portnoy raised, you know, $70 million for small businesses. They could have raised $500 million. $500 million, I'll bet. and actually done something like Daniel Kaluuya said. But, you know, it's on every one of you guys out there, and they're all going to go out and be like, woohoo, woohoo, and do nothing real other than talk, and not make change. And change can happen in small ways, guys. You know, I spent Sunday, you know, at a small community in Jacksonville that's really impoverished, you know, with a church that's broken down and 2 pastors, one older, one younger, they're trying to get that community off its ground. And we cleaned up the neighborhood. There was service to people, and we're going to renovate that church. We're going to get the community involved. We're going to get some companies involved, and we're going to renovate that church, because the churches in these communities I don't mean this as a religious thing. They become like home bases where moms with kids could come in, where you could, you know, have programs for kids with, you know, like the Police Athletic League after school, get into these neighborhoods and make a difference. Just one tiny little thing I spent half a day doing. What could those celebrities have done instead of patting themselves on the back? And that's what really gets me worked up. They talk about making a difference, and the difference they make is they put on a lame show, as Monkey Arms said, bad TV. And yes, Monkey Arms had a comment earlier, which I wanted to mention. Yes, I agree, Monkey Arms. You watch something, you base it not on the color of the person. And I think that's what most of us do. Black and white, Latino, Asian, we watch and base it on the quality of what we saw, you know? Thanks, 40 million. I made it 70. I gave Dave Portnoy a doubling. That's fake news. And we base it on what we saw and what we thought was good. But the mindset we're getting in is to base it on something else. And my biggest frustration is how out of touch elites are, how completely out of touch they are. And if this didn't prove it to Hollywood, and it didn't, because they think they did an amazing job connecting, you know, if any time you should have had triple the ratings, everyone's home. I mean, people are starting to come out a little bit. I mean, not really, not until 4th of July when you can have small barbecues, but in the universe I live in, people are out. But still, you know, nobody's watching because nobody cares. And so at the end of the day, the best thing Hollywood and elites could do is not message us so much, but actually start using their power and influence to make a difference. Okay, shifting gears to how elites are out of touch. Political elites are just as out of touch as entertainment elites. And, you know, like I said, it's a debate, you know, which is more elitist, Hollywood or Washington? I've lived in both. They're both pretty elite. They're both pretty out of touch. And it's not just the high level elites. Small level elites are out of touch too. Political leaders in general, you know, some of those powerful political leaders in our country's history weren't national politicians. They may became national figures. Huey Long, you know, was a governor. And, you know, he almost became president, but, he was like a force to be reckoned with. So it's not just the national, but the national political elite's way out of touch. I want to quickly show you a little video. Again, another cop incident, but it's very quick. Cop incident and a black man.
Listen to me. We're going to do this one step at a time. All right?
Okay. Can I get my phone first?
No. Right now, I want your ID and your driver's license. Okay?
I can't do that. The only reason.
Don't tense up.
I'm tensing up.
Don't tense up.
Okay, it's almost funny. It really is, you guys. I show this because it's actually not just some dude driving by. Here's a tweet. It's actually a Democratic rep from Michigan. Can we pop that tweet up, Crafty? Democratic rep Jewel Jones, who is arrested, and he's 2 times over the limit. And in the arrest, you don't hear it. He goes after he rolls into the ditch. He says that he's going to call. He says he's going to call. He says, "I don't give a F. You know, when I call Gretchen, you guys are in trouble." Gretchen Whitmer is the governor of Michigan. So when I call Gretchen, you guys are going to be in trouble. And then he says, "Not going to be good for you. I run y'all's budget, bro." That's what he says. So they arrested him, and he might go to jail for 2 years. But, you know, he's like, when I call Gretchen, you know, it's that power thing. And celebs do it too. Kevin Spacey, you know, years ago when I worked in DC, Kevin Spacey was, I had given the fun task of entertaining Kevin Spacey because he'd come to see President Clinton and Clinton was too busy. So he shuffled him off on me and I had to take him out with a couple other people, one of whom was actually a young guy who Kevin Spacey couldn't keep his eyes or hands off of. That's not a surprise, is it? Although we gave this young guy a heck of a hard time about it because he was straight as an arrow. But we got to this bar, it was closing, and Kevin Spacey, they wouldn't let us in. He goes, "Do you know who I am?" And the bouncer goes, yeah, I know who you are, and you can't come in. I'm like, what, dude? What an elitist, dumb, whatever. Back to politics. It's not just Democrats, though. Just to be fair, here's a tweet or a picture from NBC of the Kansas Senate Majority Leader Gene Suellentrop. He gets by the way, it happened about the same time. It's both happened in mid-April. He gets arrested driving drunk 2 times over the legal limit. Republican Senate Majority Leader of Kansas. And what he says is, thanks, Crafty. What he says is he tells the cops that he calls the cop Donut Boy, and then tells him he can take him. He's like, I can take you. And he's all ready to fight him. And the cop's like, he got all fiery up in my face. The guy's like 69, overweight white guy. I can take you. And my point is, like, it's not really about left or right or even white and black. I do think those cops in the one with the black guy, I was a little like, again, a little aggressive, right? Like, he didn't really do anything. He's just drunk off his ass. And like, he's not like, he's not cooperating, but they grab him and throw him down to the ground. Nobody got hurt. But at the same time, it sort of made me think, Monkey Arms, you do not have to answer any questions to the police. You have that right to remain silent. That is true, but you do not have the right not to give them your ID when you've been arrested. And you're arrested when you're detained. So when they remove you from a car drunk or intoxicated, you do have to comply with what they ask you to do. You can't refuse to give them identification. Now, if they walk up to you on the street for no reason, you can. I've done that before. But if you've been detained, that's, again, that's the whole issue of like, stop and frisk policies and all that. But my point is, again, that there's plenty of elitism that goes around, and all these political leaders, even at the state level, think their power will shield them, think their power will protect them. But the elitism gets the most crazy when we go national. And that's why I think, drum roll, Caitlyn Jenner might be a refreshing change of pace. So Caitlyn Jenner, the new face of the Republican Party? What do you think? I mean, here's the thing about Caitlyn Jenner. You know what? Let me play, before I get into this, let me play a little clip from Dave Portnoy being interviewed on Ben Shapiro. So I know if you're on the left, you hate Ben Shapiro. I can't stand watching Ben Shapiro. He's so slow for me. He's not a great interviewer. I've cut him completely out of this. I just wanted to hear Dave Portnoy's responses. He's talking about he's talking about the future of American politics, and he says, he likes some things that Trump did, but he thinks Trump screwed up on a lot. Obviously, the thing in Charlottesville when he said good people on both sides, points that out, and the whole thing with the Capitol. And he's like, and the truth is, wouldn't be a good thing for Trump to run again. He's a divisive leader. But he basically sets it up and to going in. Ben Shapiro asked him about the future. Are we just screwed with our division? Here's the clip.
So there's things he did that are really bad, but again, it's so two-sided on every, like the Democrats being like, let's all get along now and you got to support the president. It's like, well, you didn't do that, so why should they do that? So it just sucks. Both sides suck. So I think the center will hold. I don't think it would be good if Trump ran for president again, because I think I think the Republicans can find people who unite the country.
Which leads me to Caitlyn Jenner. The 180 transformation. Crafty, can I show my little picture? There it is. Bruce Jenner on the Wheaties box. I remember that as a kid. Bruce Jenner on the Wheaties box and Caitlyn on the cover of Vanity Fair. I have to say, thanks, Crafty. Really both a good-looking guy and a good-looking woman, right? I mean, good genes. If ever there was a profound transformation, that's not just someone was transgender and had a change. It's like one of the world's most famous male athletes, like, iconic, famous athlete, how many 7-time Olympic gold winner, whatever the number was, like record breaking in all fronts, becomes a transgender to a woman and becomes a Republican woman on top of it. Why do I think Caitlyn Jenner should not be written off? Because she is an incredibly interesting and compelling candidate. And some people out there, you might think, what do you think? I'm curious. Do you think Caitlyn Jenner is like a joke? Do you think she's just a celebrity? Do you think, another celebrity just trying to get in the mix? I think not, but I'd love to hear, if you disagree with me. But I think Caitlyn Jenner offers something really, really exceptional and unique as a Republican. And the left is going to have a hard time attacking her. Sure, the LGBTQ plus community will criticize her and say you supported Trump. And she'll come back and say, I did until 2018 when I realized what he was saying about transgender people, and I stopped supporting him. But she's an interesting candidate because she's hard to attack. She comes from the world's most famous family. She's got a good relationship with her biological daughters, who are both mega influencers. She's got a decent relationship with her stepdaughters, the Kardashians. They all have a platform that reaches billions of people. They are hard to attack. She is hard to attack. You are attacking a transgender person who you say supported Trump, but then said, I'm done with Trump. But more importantly, Caitlyn Jenner is running on a message that I think is the future for both parties, but particularly, I'm going to talk about what both parties do here, but particularly for Republicans. She is running on a message of, I am not running against a Democrat. I'm running against the establishment. And the establishment has had power for too long, and the establishment isn't making any change. And the establishment is ruining a beautiful place like California. I want California back. The win for Republicans is going to be when they start offering different candidates, not the ones you think of, not the typical stodgy, conservative candidates, all white, but candidates who look different and also have a different message. Not, I'm against the horrible socialist Democrats and I'm pro-Trump, but whose message is, I'm against the establishment that is messing up this country, and I'm for things like ending homelessness in our community. I'm for things like cleaning up our environment. I'm for things like fixing our broken and impoverished communities. I'm for things like giving people an actual platform to succeed and fixing our schools. I'm for all kinds of changes that our communities want, and our cities and our states need, and our country needs. I am for those things. I'm for protecting the environment. I may not be for the Green New Deal, but I'm for fixing the environment. Our environment's in trouble. I'm for fixing it. I'm for fixing our infrastructure. That is going to be the message the new wave of Republicans will run on. And it won't be, I'm for whatever Donald Trump said, and it won't be, I'm against those horrible socialist Democrats. That will be a winning message if Republicans adopt it, and Caitlyn Jenner might just adopt it. Write Caitlyn Jenner off at your own risk, your own peril. Right now, Gavin Newsom is quaking in his boots. He is like, this is the worst possible person that could run. The recall is going to happen. You vote once if you want him recalled. If the recall happens, then the candidates come on the ballot, and Newsom can't be on the ballot if he gets knocked off in the recall. So if enough people see someone else on that ticket that they might support, they'll vote against Newsom for a recall. They'll vote for the recall. The vote will happen. Will she win? She's going to be such a formidable candidate from money point of view, from a messaging point of view, from her fame point of view. She's articulate. She's compassionate. She's a trans woman, and she's not a Trump Republican. That is going to be the new face, the new future for Republicans. The question is, both parties have this challenge. Democrats are equally out of touch. And Democrats have a unique and special dilemma of their own. And here's what I think it is. 2022 is looming down on the Democratic Party like an avalanche coming. They know that they are going to lose in the midterms. I don't care what they say. They know they're going to lose. First of all, every seated president, with the exception of like George Bush after the Gulf War, lost seats to the opposition party, to the other party. If there's a Democrat, lost seats to Republican to Democrats in the midterm elections. Every time, I think, except for Bush and maybe one other time way back in the day. It's just kind of what happens. It's how we shift. Secondly, I've said before, they have to redistrict all the districts around the country by law every 10 years. There's a redistricting that has to happen. And whoever controls those state legislatures in each state will redistrict to their benefit. Republicans control more state legislatures than Democrats. They will redistrict more districts to win. The margin's not that wide in the House. I don't know, what is it, 7 or 8 or something, 9? So they're going to win back control of the House and maybe of the Senate. And Democrats know that. So they've got a year and a half to jam through everything they want to get done. And they face a Senate. First of all, they face Democrats who are more not as liberal, who are worried about getting reelected in a House. And then they face a Senate that's evenly divided. And Joe Manchin is literally like the stick in the mud or the stick up their butt that will not let them move. And is like, I'm going to force compromise. So how do they get their massive agenda through? How do they get a Green New Deal through? How do they get immigration reform through? How do they even get their infrastructure bill through? But here's my point. They're not even focusing on the right things. Climate change is not the issue you should be focusing on in Congress right now. I'm not saying climate change isn't important. It is. Fixing our environment and taking care of it is important, but you're not going to drive through a massive new, Green New Deal bill in this divided a country, nor should you be trying to right now. We've just come out of a pandemic. Immigration, look, we've got to do immigration reform sooner or later, but they've created a crisis on the border, whether they want to call it one or not. They're trying to just look away from it, put Kamala Harris, the vice president, on it and let her never talk about it. And they're going to try to just look past it because they know that's a sinkhole they're going to go down, and they won't get the reform through. And even infrastructure, Joe Manchin just came out and said, I like the Republicans' infrastructure alternative, which is 600 billion instead of 2 trillion or whatever it is. And okay, so there goes your main Democrat guy that has to be with you saying, I like the Republican plan that focuses on traditional infrastructure. So they're trying to do too much in the wrong way. And what they're missing is the things that matter most to most people. Jobs, healthcare. Whatever happened to healthcare on both sides? Did we just forget that our healthcare system's a disastrous train wreck? Obamacare didn't fix it. It did a few things and made a whole lot of things worse. The Republicans came in and had no clue what to do, so they just spun their wheels for a while and then left it in place. I mean, what happened to we have a busted up healthcare system that needs fixing? How about make that your priority before climate change? What about small business revitalization? Hundreds of thousands of small businesses have gone down because of the pandemic. And a disproportionate number of black businesses, percentage-wise, have gone down, like a larger percentage of, not of the total, but of overall for black businesses, minority-owned businesses. How about really putting a focus on, we're going to, excuse me, talk myself up to where I coughed. How about really putting a focus on really revitalizing, a real plan to revitalize small businesses in America, not just PPE loans, or investing in really impoverished communities, a national agenda around doing these things. How about that's your focus if you're the Democrats, not on these big giant, pie in the sky ideas that are politically woke and sound great to the far left, but not to everyone in the middle. And again, I've just trashed Republicans who've spent their time on the far right and not again focused on these problems. They had plenty of time during Trump to fix healthcare after all their complaining, and they didn't do crap. But if we get to the midterms and the Democrats haven't done anything significant, they may get an infrastructure bill through, but it's going to be on the Republicans' terms. They will lose badly in the midterms. And then we'll have more divided government for 2 years until both parties decide we are going to change our focus, change our priorities, change what we look at. Can that happen? Can our national government change? I get that a lot happens at the state level. I get that state legislatures are more and more the place to see really innovative change, both in economic policy and social policy. I get the federal government's hands are tied in some ways to what they focus on, but they are able to set initiatives, set agendas, and they are able to influence the trend of how things go. And right now they're so stuck on their platform, both sides. People just feel so out of touch with Congress. It's like these people have no clue. Even during the insurrection or whatever you want to call it, I was shocked at all these members of Congress acting like they were about to die. I was like, have you ever walked through a bad neighborhood? Like, you got a bunch of cops and stuff around you. I know there's a bunch of people charging in. They don't have guns. They're all, they're rioters, chaos, whatever. You're going to be fine. You got people to protect you. Yeah, I thought my life flashed before my eyes. I'm like, you really haven't really stood in a really, really bad neighborhood before where your life might have flashed before your eyes because something was coming at you that could mess you up. Monkey Arms, he's implementing what he ran on. And thank you for giving me my Spanish name. Yes and no. Excuse me. Yes and no, Monkey Arms. He is. Yes. It's what he ran on. But as I've said before, he got elected because he wasn't Trump. Got elected because he was a stick figure who wasn't Donald Trump, not because of what he ran on. Would have gotten elected if he'd run on, I'm going to put, I'm going to give everybody stockings and fill them with Bitcoin. Like he he can do whatever he wants. He's already shifted a bunch of times, on where he's going. He can change, and he should change. Flexibility is key when you're in executive leadership. He doesn't have to stick to the platform that they ran on that isn't really why they got elected. What he has to do is change America for the better. And he's in a position to lead. I want him to lead, but I want him to lead in a meaningful way. I want him to lead in things that matter to most people. Right now, if you survey people, these things don't matter to them. Infrastructure matters, and it's probably like roads and bridges infrastructure. I mean, I wrote about it 15 years ago. And I'm not saying other things aren't infrastructure. Sure, we live in a digital age. Digital is infrastructure. But focus a core on rebuilding the actual physical infrastructure and the technology, the physical technology infrastructure that we need in this country right now. Because, giving broadband access to everybody, rural communities, that kind of stuff. Focus on the hardcore infrastructure, just on that, not on all these other things that are tied in there. It's not going to go anywhere. And what people want is they want to see change on the ground level. And they want their government to work for them. Even things like violence, they have a role in that. They could do some really meaningful stuff around police reform or around guns, but they're not. They're just going to, fight about a little. And I get it. Neither side will do what the other side wants, I mean, I sat in David Gergen's office, when he was one of the top advisors to Clinton, and we talked about Social Security reform and stuff around the deficit. And he said, we won't do it. And I was like, why? He's like, because we tested it out, and the Democrats, the Republicans, are going to stomp on us for doing it. I'm like, Republicans want it. He's like, nah, they don't, not if we initiate it. It's like neither side will do. They haven't for 20 years, 30 years. We'll do what the other side wants done if the other side initiates it. That's what's wrong with our government right now. So here's my solution. 343 politics. Political polarization is one of the biggest issues facing the nation. And it's right where I'm going with this. I think the polarization is not only one of the biggest issues, it might be the single defining issue that separates us. We've always had a politically partisan system. I mean, people like to think it's new. It's not. I may have said this before, Jefferson and Adams both founded the country. They were best buds. Jefferson in the presidential election, accused Adams of being a traitor, not just like a bad guy, like a traitor to the French, selling state secrets. You could die for that if you were convicted. Adams didn't talk to him for 20 years. He's like, how could you accuse me of being a traitor? Literally a traitor to the country, not just like whatever, an actual traitor. And, in their deathbed, Abigail Adams is like, John, you two are going to die not saying goodbye to each other. This is stupid. Let 20 years ago go. We've always been partisan, but we've never been polarized to the level where people are hating each other so much. Maybe the closest was the Civil War, and that literally split the country apart. So the polarization is horrible. And they do what benefits the party rather than what's best for the nation. I agree with that. They always have. They think short term. They think their power, and they're happy to share power. The sad truth is, having been in Washington enough, both sides are happy to have power as long as they share it, right? They call each other names. They hate each other. Then they shake hands and make sure just we have it. There's no room for something new to come in that would dismantle them, which is why I'm going to go with my solution. And I want to toss it out there for you guys. And I'm dead serious about this. I think we need a national enema. We should have, in an upcoming election, we should run a campaign. Our goal is to throw every single elected member of Congress out. Now, some of you, I know, think this is a terrible idea because then the bureaucrats will run the system. Not true in my view. Yes, the permanent infrastructure of Washington will always have a certain amount of running things. But we live in an age where increasingly legislators have power, especially because of social media, to make change. And they have power to stop change. And they keep their traditions in place. So one big election, throw every single member of Congress out and replace them with somebody new who has never held public office. So all of you could run. Tyler could run. Monkey, any one of you can join in the bandwagon and run for office as a citizen candidate. But we throw every single person out, and then we pass an amendment, a term limit amendment, two-year terms. That's it. You're out. One term for the Senate. I know that's tricky, right? But it's a 6-year term. And 10-year term limits for the Supreme Court. There's no reason the Supreme Court should stay in office for a lifetime. We keep going over this. Everyone wants Justice Breyer to retire. Like, please, Justice Breyer, retire. Justice Breyer story I won't tell you right now. But he's an elite. I was in law school and I met him. I'm going to tell it. He didn't, like, literally, he wanted to write a sitcom about the Supreme Court. And at the time, the woman I was dating was an actress in LA, and we were joking about Mary Tyler Moore, the old sitcom, right? And most of you know who that is, but he's older, so he really knows who it is. It was during his like 30s, and he's like, Mary Tyler, who? I'm like, have you never watched TV? He's like, I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm like, great, they're not very in touch. But anyway, no need to have them in office for a lifetime. 10 years, they can't be messed with for those 10 years. They get one term and they're done. But a national enema, what do you guys think? Throw everybody out of office, start fresh, put on term limits, and get a Congress that's made up of all of us. And yes, I've said it before. I want more AOCs. You can hate her, but I feel like she is who she is. She came from where she came from. She's not fake. You may not like it. You may think she's a drama queen. You may think her ideas are crazy, but she was that person in a bar. She was that person when she was a server. That's who she is. She's a real person, and those people can get traction. Let's get a lot of those people. And again, on the other side, I know you think MTJ is a kook, QAnon, but again, a kind of a real person. Like real people have flaws, but real people actually go in to get something done. And then let's come together. Let's end this craziness. End this craziness of this hyperpolarization that is killing and destroying everything and every one of us in different ways. And as I always like to say, particularly those who most need help right now. Thanks for watching, guys. It's Rob Nelson Live.